Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Lightwork session. It's good to have everyone back. It's also good to have Mr. Muyiwa join us in tonight's session to take the concluding part of our session, right? Last 2 weeks ago, we looked at business governance, creating structures that foster business growth. And I remember MFP, for short, right? Took us through the journey of business governance and all its components. Personally, I was one thing that stuck with me is that governance ensures that things, especially businesses, are run properly. And when we look at business governance, we're basically looking at the relationship between the different key stakeholders. For those of us that were in the session, it took us through some different categories and different layers and structures of business governance that we should have in mind, right? And he has been gracious to give us a part 2. So as they say, bottom pot. So I hope it's very enlightening and engaging for us. So before we start, I'll quickly share MFP's profile, right? So that we know and get to meet the person that is going to take us through tonight's session. So Muyiwa is a consummate professional who has significant experience in the public and private sector, respectively. His experience spans almost 2 decades of dual exposure. He has worked in various capacities at senior roles in 5 commercial banks. Muyiwa's last stint as a banker was in senior management with EcoBank, where he served as a technical assistant to the CEO, then also head of strategy implementation. Muyiwa went on to drive the business value chain for the bank nationally before taking up the lead role in the EcoBank regional SME banking team, where his journey into the world of SME started. Since then, he has been able to identify numerous gaps and opportunities within the SME space. He is the founder of the SME Mall and is passionate about SME advocacy. Muyiwa is a civil engineer by training. He is a foundational certificate holder of ACCA in accounting, an alumnus of Harvard Business School, where he obtained a diploma in general management. He has also attended various courses at top global institutions. So to our community members, let's give a virtual standing ovation to Muyiwa, popularly known as MFP, who is the MD and CEO of SME Mall. You're welcome, sir.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening to you all. And I want to thank you all for joining the second part of this particular topic or Lightboard session. I'll just have a quick recap over the next 5 to 10 minutes. And that recap is for those that may not have been part of the session then. So please tell me if you can see my screen.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yes, you can. Okay, so so we basically started with talking about the relationship between management and governance. Then we talked about who are the principal actors. We were asking ourselves, why does it matter? The governance matrix and the case study analysis. I'm not sure. Okay, I think let's make this very interactive because this session is not more about the educating, but it's all about the practical side of it. So I want to ask if anybody knows who the key principal actors in the governance matrix are. Does anybody know who the principal actors are?
So we can use the hand raise feature, or we drop in the chat. I think one from my end, if I remember from last session, would be the
Okay, I'm
owners.
not seeing anyone, but so there are a lot of stakeholders, right, involved in a company. And when I say stakeholders, that is people that have interest in the institution and either want it to succeed or need to ensure they adhere to the rules and a few other things. So we are having people like shareholders, creditors, employees, regulators, suppliers, different stakeholders. However, our principal actors in the governance mechanism is three key people. We have your shareholders, we have the management that run the business, and then we have the board of directors. Those three, I call them the tripartite, and they are the most critical to ensuring the success. So all of them must be in alignment with the other secondary actors, employees, suppliers, and creditors. So we quickly run through why governance is important. We did that, and we talked about the fact that it ensures sustainability most importantly. It also helps you become more bankable. It also makes it easy to access funding. It also makes you a good member of society by complying to the societal expectations depending on the industry. It also reduces dependence on key individuals. So this business evolution slide very quickly tells us the various stages of businesses and how the governance structures that are needed at each stage will be utilized. Then I go to, so we had a case called Langmon Nigeria Limited and her journey into expansion. So this is where we're now going to start today's session. And that is, what does governance look like in Nigeria? So I know a few of us, or most of us here are entrepreneurs. And as entrepreneurs, there are some basic things that we should have, which most of us don't, but today which we aim to fix and for which we want to put most of us on a corrective path. So what do I mean by governance in Nigeria? I can ask a simple question like, how many of us here that own companies have a board of directors? Any response to that? Okay, so one thing I must say is that a lot of us in Nigeria basically set up companies. So we're starting from the fundamental and using the matrix we have. So our principal actors are shareholder management and the board. So now the first question is, how many Nigerian companies here have a board of directors? Now, how many of us here understand what the function of the board of directors is? How many of us, even if it's one person that the managing director or the management reports to, how many of us have that? Now, the relationship between shareholder and management is what has always existed in Nigeria, which has been like a two-way street where it's more about profitability and how much I can make from the business without thinking of all the other elements that are very important for your existence and for your long-term sustainability. So we'll take startups and then we'll just take some basic governance products or the basic governance services that are very critical in every business. So let's assume we have a startup. I just want to start a business and I say I want to adhere by best practice governance rules. So when I want to adhere by best practice governance rules, then I want to do all the things that are necessary to align with number one, regulatory environment, number two, shareholder expectation, number three, management expectation. So what would I do? I would have simple things like number one, incorporation of a limited liability company. Now, the difference between a limited liability company, sole proprietor, and the personal names, they all have to do with the fact that a lot of entrepreneurs are trying to see how they can, I choose to use my words carefully here, optimize their tax efficiency. But what then happens is they run the companies because they are under personal names, under personal accounts, and then there's what we call a dual, well, back and forth extension of the owner's behavior and personal life into the business. So I will start on the accounting side by having proper tax registration, my TIN registration, a human resource component will be having a proper organogram. What is my ideal organogram over 5 years? Now, what my ideal organogram over 5 years is what I want it to be in 5 years, but I can be starting with even just one staff, and which is me, the founder alone. And from there, you start to fill into the necessary roles to ensure that there's efficiency in the business. Now, when we say organogram, we also need to be careful not to just think it is management organogram. We are having a holistic institutional organogram that has what we call the board of directors. So management will report to the board of directors, and we will, at least in the minimum, have a board member overseeing management that will hold management accountable for performance and growth of the business. So that's organogram. Business advisory, concept node development, and all that. So in this area, dependent on the kind of business, there are different types of documents under the business advisory side that are important. And one of the most important ones for those that are seeking bank financing is a bankable business plan. And this bankable business plan is something that contains elements that are most critical for anyone to know that you understand the business you're going into and you understand what you need to do. And then most importantly, highlights of your 5 years summarized financial statements. However, not all businesses have what we call the opportunity to have this done because it's expensive. A lot of us may be accidental entrepreneurs, and as accidental entrepreneurs, we possibly would have to evolve over time. And most importantly, the most basic thing we may need is a concept note document, which will at a high level tell us, okay, this is where I want to play. These are the key players. You do your SWOT. What are the risks? What is the barrier to entry? And minimal things like that. And then so you will now have an idea of, okay, this business I'm getting into, these are the key resources, these are my critical success factors, and a few other parameters. Now, on the technology side, having your website is a very important component of your business. And a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs take this for what we call, we don't take it seriously. And the reason why we don't is we feel there's no need if I'm not borrowing, if I'm not advertising, I have my supply and all that. But what we need to know is when you have your website, it gives you what is called the corporate outlook. It gives you what is called the independent look that is very professional in the minds of your various stakeholders. Legal side, we can look at something like so we talked about this. This is your business name registration. Instead of that, you can decide I want to have a limited liability company and vice versa. So under marketing and branding, we have what is called the brand collateral that speaks to what is my business about, what do I stand for, and you may not have the money to develop what is called the full brand manual or brand Bible that is somehow exhaustive, as much as 50 slides talking about the business, the brand, the colors, the vision, the origin, and a few other things. But in this case, you have simple things that show that you're professional and such as your complimentary card, your logos designed, and maybe one or two other things, flyers, brochures, simple things like that. Okay, so this, for instance, is what we call, for a startup, the governance that is needed in the minimum. Any questions? Okay, Viv, let me see if I know how to do this.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Viv. Let me see, I just need to minimize this. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about, rather my question is around setting up a board, which also helps with corporate governance. So
Correct.
now, also a lot of SMEs are running slim in terms of cash at bank and cash at hand. But now, if I want to set up a board, because I know those directors might ask for fees, in the event that I can't afford it, what else can I offer them in return for having them as my board members, pending when we get really profitable, or at least to an extent we can afford to pay them?
Okay, thank you. I mean, that's a very good question. So basically, nobody's expecting a startup to be able to pay a solid board member the fees that are appropriate for their professional competence. However, we can always start with what we call an accountability partner. And that accountability partner can be a business mentor. So in this case, for instance, economy entrepreneurs don't have a board, and they feel that they need a board member to be able to help them drive it. For those that are close to Viv and they feel she's competent enough, Viv can decide to accept that role and drive it. One thing that is very clear in being a board member is the word independent and objective. So I will not advise you to be a board member of your besto. I will be a board member of someone that I do not know, and we have an arm's length relationship. So if, for instance, economy, universe, ecosystem, say they need board members and I'm approached, I do not know any of them. I have no interest in their business. It's just basically to help them grow their business and make the CEO accountable. Now, the reason why I mentioned this is, in the past, on a few interactions with some fast-growing companies, I've come to realize that the CEOs don't want to be held accountable. And that accountability most times also leads us to asking whether the founder is capable of actually taking the business to the next level. They are painful but difficult questions. They have to be answered, and we need to put in place those structures such that we don't have emperors in companies. So Vivi, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, because I remember a client who once complained about growth and all that, and I said, okay, do X, Y, Z, but however, do you have a board structure? Because when you have a board structure, also some board members can also help you drive business depending on the KPIs you set for them. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you put
I
me
understand.
on the board, yes,
Okay.
you can say this person has the network in financial services. This person, if you're maybe, I'm a phone dealer in Saka Tinubu. If I put somebody that is in Saka or an association on it, I know why I'm putting in, because I want to drive business and all that. But at the same time, we need to also be sure that the person can hold the MD accountable. So it depends on what your strategic objective is. Okay, so any other questions? Okay, so that is for startups. So we've talked about startups, what they need, and all. Now, can we move on to growing companies? So we've started a company, and the company is done 1 year, 2 years, and we need to put in place structures. And then those structures have to be quickly in place such that people do not operate in within a mad environment. So we will then have them being checked. So for instance, a corporate governance measure that you can put in place in a growing company is, if from the accounting side is your payroll processing. Who does it? So there's something called maker checker. Who initiates payroll? Who approves payroll? Now, under HR, who decides when we hire? Who decides what skill is required for the person we're hiring? And how is the process carried out? On advisory, yes, you can always have the diagnostic side where we've started, we're not growing. Can we have a deep dive session where we can have multiple stakeholders? So you may have your trinity and decide to add employees and creditors or other stakeholders to find out what exactly is going on here. And that's what you call your strategy session. But in this case, we use the word business diagnostic session. Then on the legal side, as you're growing, you need to have your own bank accounts. So it has to, you have to have a corporate account, because once you have a corporate account, it means that when the auditor wants to do your books, it's easier for him to actually do the books. Unlike when I have 3, 4 personal accounts through which I move money to the company and through which we cannot see whether or not there's any leakage or there's any plan to circumvent or siphon funds. Then you now start on the marketing and branding side, you now start talking about who are my target customers? What are the kind of messages I need to send to them? What are the tools I need to utilize to send those messages? And I will look at mature companies. So when we talk about mature companies, we're basically talking about companies that have standard structure, and we will say they are stable. So once they are stable, it means they are on they're an autopilot. So you are talking about your regulatory, legal and regulatory compliance, so your statutory returns, your annual returns, under HR, your performance management toolkit. How do I appraise my staff? How do I exit staff? Do I follow a process? For instance, let's take a simple example on the performance management. Part of what corporate governance seeks to stop is where a founder, because he feels somebody is not doing well, decides, he wakes up one morning and says, I don't want to work with Larry. Larry is being a dingbat. I don't think he can deliver what I want and all that. However, we all know that in the very big organizations, when you join, there's induction, they give you a manual, they put you through what the organization expects, you meet your teammates, then you start your work with the right work tools. Then you go through a period of 6 months, then you are confirmed, and if you're not up to par, then your confirmation is either extended or you are disengaged. So we can see that there is what we call a structured way and a phased approach to dealing with the employee's progress. An institution with poor corporate governance will have situations where you will say in 3 months, the person hasn't met his targets, in 4 months, he hasn't, then you say, look, this man, I'm not sure you can deliver this day. This month, let me just cut my losses and you leave. There are situations where you just want to take punitive action without following a grievous mechanism. So meaning somebody's come late to the office 3 times, and because he has come to the office 3 times or has committed 3 offenses, you just fire the person. You need to follow a process. So the first offense, was there an email? Was there a warning? Was there an engagement? The second one, did you copy the file? Did you follow the institutional process? The third one, okay, am I ready to send this person on a suspension? The suspension can be with pay or without pay. Then is in the extreme that you have a case where you say on a first instance, you fire someone. So we can see, for instance, how corporate governance and placed in HR avoids people becoming dictators in institutions. So your business plan, we talked about that. Technology, basically the tools you need to be able to ensure the efficiency of your business. And so your web app development, your iOS and all that the customers will be able to use. These days, the customers are in love more with apps they can download. They don't really embrace web app development so much, which is surprising. A lot of us that are entrepreneurs find the web app cheaper, but we would have to eventually align with the customer's expectations. So a mature company has company profiles, talking about who are the directors, what is their experience, who are they, why do we feel they can lead this institution? Talking about what the company is, its vision, what it wants to achieve. I mean, people, let me take a simple example of when someone starts selling yogurt and says, oh, this is what I want to do. I left banking and this is what I think I know how to do. The person doesn't have a vision at that point. The person doesn't have a mission statement. All the person wants to do is sell. The only thing that matters to that person is profit. So by the time the person grows out of that survival mode, then you now start putting in place the structures around the person and the business. So a lot of times it's not as progressive as this table shows it. At times you start without all at once, and at some point down the line, you now put all at the same time, depending on what resources you have. Okay. Any questions?
I had one question to take you back a bit. Can you hear me?
No problem. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, awesome. So when you were talking about startups, right? Looking at board of directors. So I was thinking amongst early, with my experience with early year businesses and startup, right? One of the things you hear is when it has to do with board of directors is the fear that the board of directors get too powerful and can even sack you from your business, right? And then you find most entrepreneurs and founders weary of that. Like you said, don't bring your bestos as board of directors, but then you find out that most of them make the mistake of bringing their bestos because again, they're afraid of losing out on their business. So how do we really look at allaying that fears and getting them to do the right thing?
Okay, so I'll balance it out for you. It is a normal fear, right, to want to lose what you own and what you like. But like it is, we also have to go through a few parameters in selecting. So if I were to select my board, my board member or board chairman, I will look at what is his experience. Do I respect him? First of all, that's number one. Number two, is this someone that I look up to? Does he have a solid network? Is he smarter than, is he someone that can guide me if I make mistakes? Now, another thing that where you're talking about is if the person that takes the role has interest in your company or does not have interest in your company. But I feel that there are legal documents that can be put in place to ensure that the shareholder owner is always protected. Do you understand? So if you sign that document, all that happens is if I am the director that is in disagreement with the founder owner, all that will happen is I'll resign. So the initial document that guides the relationship between the shareholder owner and the board of directors is very important. Because there's what you call a board charter. The board charter is created to tell you what the board member can do. You can have in your board charter the removal or omission of some particular actions. However, what happens is when you now start to get to raise capital, whoever is giving you money is expecting dividend. And to expect dividend, you must perform. If you're not performing, we are not saying you don't own the company. We are saying you cannot run the company. So we need to separate those two things, where you know that you own the company, but you cannot be the one to run the company. Do you understand, Godwin?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Okay, so it's something that also needs to be discussed because it's a real and present, it's a clear and present danger these days where you have to be careful who you give things to, because whether we like it or not, There are some that possibly may kick you out, which is true. But you cannot kick someone out without a board charter. So the board charter is what will now deal with it, whether in arbitration or you say, I don't want this to be solved in court, and then this is the arbitration rule that will guide it and all that. So it's clear. What happens also is this lack of knowledge. And lack of knowledge is very bad because it puts in you the fear that is unsubstantiated. And this kind of session, for instance, where you are empowering your ecosystem entrepreneurs to know the do's and the don'ts and how to be able to solve some problems. Because once they start running companies, they also don't take time to develop themselves. You can ask how many of these entrepreneurs here, how many of them in the last 2 years of their business have gone to read a course, have gone to say they want to improve themselves? Very little. So you would always need someone that on a high level will guide you on that. So to answer it very simply, there is a board charter and there are legal documents that can be emplaced to protect the interest of the shareholder/manager of the business. Thank you. Okay, any other question?
We don't have any now. I think we'd have a number popping up in this next session.
Okay. So what does governance look like in Nigeria? Okay. So now we're going to another area that is very critical for all of us to know as aspiring business owners, present business owners, and business managers. So what are the challenges that you face in Nigeria with respect to placing proper business governance in your business? So we're talking here about the business governance constraints in Nigeria. See, for instance, the first thing that Madam Viv said was, what if I cannot afford to pay a board member? Affordability. So what then happens? The person decides, no, I won't do it. Why would I want to carry a cost of a board member, or maybe every board sitting 150K or 250K? Why? For what? What is he doing? No. So affordability is a major issue. Then another area is quality of delivery. Quality of delivery has to do with the fact that a lot of times the outputs that people seek may not necessarily be what they get. Then accessibility can be, how do I get what I want with respect to the governance tool in particular I need? So let's take a simple example. I am running a startup and we are growing, then I need to get a performance management toolkit. I need to find HR partners. I need to do XYZ. Where could I find them? Accessibility. Then another one is reliability. So I want to find out if anyone has any other business governance constraints in Nigeria, or should I use let me rephrase it into, why do we think that business governance is not being embraced in Nigeria? So that's a simpler question.
My own take, I know you had mentioned something when you said a lot of people are accidental entrepreneurs.
Mm.
So because of the way, so people go into entrepreneurship, not necessarily well equipped for the journey. So all they're looking at is the numbers or that people are raising money and not necessarily the process. So they don't understand, maybe one, the importance of having solid business governance
And structures.
and structures. Yeah, they don't understand the importance and they feel it's something I can do it on my own. I don't need to, invest there. I rather focus on other things that would give me money. So they don't think it's important.
Correct. I like that. Very, very straightforward and very truthful. So a lot of them don't understand the need for processes and structures. And they just feel it's expensive. They also don't have the skill sets. And why should I do it? What will happen if I don't do it? And in fairness, that meant there is what we call the Nigerian mentality of so I will use a local balance. Make we work and make we comot am. If we will survive, there are things we do where it affects our progression. We feel we can survive without this, we can do without this, whereas it never really happens to be so. We always believe we know it all. Okay, so then, so that's fine. So I guess we all have an idea now of why do people not want to adhere to these things? So we're talking about setting up for success. So setting up for success leads us to an important area, and which is what are your SME problems and how do we use different toolkits to solve their problems? So this is not where we are. Okay, now this. So these are your SME challenges. And these challenges are real. Inconsistency in government policies, lack of access to finance, poor infrastructure, or obsolete infrastructure, all those things. Let's move to. So now I will move out of this to some toolkits or some products or some activities or services that you may need. So most startups in the minimum should have concept note, a feasibility study, business model design, company incorporation, logo design, to be able to guide you. Let me give you a practical example of this. So when I left banking, I was interested in what waste recycling. I thought it was very simple, very easy now. It's not plastic bottle, you pack it today, malam, do this. Try and follow the cycle. I got someone to check, okay, do this. How was the whole logistics value chain? But down the line, when I heard there's a machine that they will need, and the machine was in a minimum $100,000. I said, that is expensive. How will I do it? So what did I do? I only commissioned the feasibility study that showed me very critically how that sector behaves, what the opportunities were, and what the outputs were. So the outputs, for instance, could have been plastic to interlocking stone, plastic pellets for exportation, plastic for different things. And when I looked at it, that document, even if it was between maybe 250K or thereabout to 500K, saved me getting into a business and getting frustrated, because I can imagine if I'd gone into that business and I need to get an equipment, I would have wasted 2-3 years of my life building the structures from the bottom, then getting to the point where I do not have the capital to be able to get the equipment that will help me multiply the value from the input materials. So those are the common things that people do not understand about why they say do some things. So this one is a practical experience of what happened to me. Now we can move to, I've started a business, German, I have my own, I used my name, my this, okay, and now it's time to put structure. At some point, I want to borrow and all that. Then you need to start talking about things like, have I incorporated, I need to develop a business plan. How do I do organizational restructuring / organogram development, brand manual, website, ITF, monthly bookkeeping, group life insurance, pay, tax planning, payroll processing, and management, you know. So that's, I'm putting structure around them. Then we can have what is called a growth kit, where this is for, I want to grow. And there are some things that when you're growing, you need. And I need to sell more, social media management, tax clearance, certificate obtainers, brochure flyer, JD, recruitment, performance management, blah, blah, blah. So basically, I think we've come to the end of this session, and we've practically seen why we need to have corporate governance in our companies, no matter how small. The most important thing I think we should take out of it here as entrepreneurs is, for those of us that do not have a board member we report to, take it as a sparring partner, take it as an accountability partner. Accountability will drive improved performance. You will do better. You will also learn. Do not be scared. Nobody's going to take over your company if you put in place the right documentation. And that is part of what we say entrepreneurs always need to seek subject matter experts' opinion before they go into a lot of things. You talk to someone that this, I hear this. Is it true they can just take over my company? Nobody can take over your company. The shares are yours. Have you transferred it to the person? He can't take it from your seat. So those are the things that people don't know. But when you set up a company without the board charter, without the management documents and all that, you will then have what we call the gray areas that are not addressed. Sit with your legal advisor. Let your legal advisor put you through. We have sessions on the SME Mall where for a 30-minute session with a legal advisor, they will put you high level through the most critical legal issues in your business. You pay for it and you move on. Then you know that I've saved myself a lot of trouble. So thank you everybody for listening, and I will take more questions for the rest of the session, which we may have another 7 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, MFP. I'm sure people are prepping for their questions, right, and clarity. So while waiting, just to circle back when you were sharing on the constraints, and just looking at it as SMEs, right, we need to be aware of these constraints, right, and we also need to be able to work around it. Just thinking, which one should an SME be most focused on, right? To say, okay, this would affect me, and this is how I should respond, looking at the constraints.
Okay, so what constraints or what exactly are they dealing with? I'm not clear on the
So
question.
I'm just looking at it. Okay, I'm looking at it from a high level position as an SME. Say I'm into, I sell vegetables, I sell foodstuffs, right, to to households. And I'm just thinking, as an SME, looking at the different constraints that you highlighted on your slide on the constraints, which one should I be paying attention to? Should I focus on all? So just generally, so as to give us a view of how to the next one. Yes.
Okay, so basically,
I think the constraint, the next one on slide 22, if I'm not mistaken.
The constraint slide, I've opened it.
Yes. Yeah, the one on 22, not the business governance one, the SME challenges in Nigeria.
Okay.
Yes.
So this slide.
Yes.
Okay, so what I tell people, okay, so let me give you a practical experience.
Okay.
What I tell people is when you're starting a business, one of the first things I would advise you to have is a business mentor. Now, separate a business mentor from your board of directors, please. There are two separate things. So who is a business mentor? Someone that I can talk to about what I want to do and achieve and has possibly succeeded ahead of me. Because the reason why you're calling him a business mentor is he has seen it, he has done it. They have the battle scars. And like people would have been telling me 2 years ago, if I was sitting down talking to you all, what you'll be asking is, what has he done? Has he built a company? Does he have any of this thing? So now, if I sit in front of you and I'm telling you XYZ is what I learned in my journey, these are the mistakes I made, and this is how I can correct them. So I will give you practical learning points. So the first thing I will advise people is have a business mentor. So a business mentor is someone you talk to, you tell him these are the directions, what do you think? So like your sounding board, they will guide you. They're not necessarily providing capital for your business. Now, and for some people, they may also provide what is called the network access or access to markets. So those are the most important things first. Then, the third thing I would now be thinking of is, do I understand this field? Who are the leaders in this field? And what makes them successful? So what do I mean by that? For instance, when we were developing the SME Mall business model, we were like, okay, let's understand why platforms are not doing well in Nigeria. Let's understand what the customer wants. And then it took us on a building journey of designing what the customer and the Nigerian environment wants. So for example, our business model is such that we do not use freelancers. So Godwin cannot be working for Economy and be a service provider on the SME Mall. Why? Because when Economy has called Godwin for a meeting and SME Mall calls him for a meeting, he will not come. It will lead to customer failure. It will lead to dissatisfaction. It will lead to a drop in our ratings, and Godwin walks away free. However, abroad, a freelancer, there are rules that they are governed by, they are controllable, and they are punishable. So, so that's another one. Then when we talk about high lack of business development support, obsolete technology, lack of access to finance, and all those things as the challenges here, the SME Mall platform was created to be able to unlock value for entrepreneurs at an affordable price. So all those things that they used to be worried about that, if I call lawyer, they'll charge me. No, it's too much. But if you call for a lawyer session, 30 minutes and it's 25K, it saves you almost $1 million or more in fines or total loss of your company and a lot of things. And that is not something out of the ordinary, it's not extraordinarily heavy. You have the commoditization of the services. such that people can pick them very easily and go. So we're a business toolkit for growth. So these challenges are why the platform exists. Now, the lack of access to finance and poor infrastructure. A lot of entrepreneurs forget that the bank that they want money from is not their teacher. It's like going to write exam, bank set exam. You entrepreneur, you fail. You think that he's going to come back and tell you, come and read like this. No, 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 no. Somebody needed to have prepared you to be sure that you pass your exam and you don't lose out on time. What do I mean by that? People go, for instance, to apply for loans, but there are some basic things they don't even know that they need. You cannot go for a loan and you do not have what is called you do not have a company incorporated. You do not have a company account dedicated to the business operations, because when you want to borrow, you are borrowing against the cash flow. And how do I know the cash flow is sufficient enough if everything that the business generates cannot be seen in an independent place? Now, the next thing is, when you also want to borrow, an independent person needs to give an assessment of the going concern status of that business, saying, I believe this business over the next few years will survive, or I do not believe this business will survive over the next few years. So that is your audit. You will need your audited financials. Then there's also the issue of collateral. What kind of collateral do I have to be able to borrow and grow my business? A lot of people don't even know simple things around the types of collaterals that are accepted and are not accepted. So then they just go in and then they lose out of time. So I've gone to the bank, they rejected me, I'm frustrated and all that. So they need to be put through a program and a curative mechanism. So the banks basically are not, they're not helping us grow that market. So another thing that SME Mall is doing, the SME Mall, the SME advocacy, where you try to help them get ready for bank financing. So I guess this answers a few of your questions around how do we solve some of the problems that entrepreneurs have and which is the most important in terms of the ranking of the activities to perform. Thank you.
Thank you, MFP. I think that is food for thought for every one of us on the call, just going back to listen to it. And just to add, we'll be sharing the recording with members of our community, and we'll likely have more people listening. And I'm sure if they have questions, we'll reach out to you and or the SME Mall.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. So I think we've come to the end of the session, and we have the SME Mall details then.
Okay. Okay. Thank you once again for this session in the last 2 weeks. It's been exciting, insightful, and engaging. So I want to appreciate you and your team for doing this with us. And we look forward to more sessions in the future with you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Economy for organizing this and trying to support the SMEs as they grow, more especially the micro guys. All right then. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, good night, everyone. See you in 2 weeks' time for another engaging session. Good night.
Good night.